It wasn't the Glock 17 pointed at his chest that made Lieutenant General Elijah Brooks nervous. He had stared down warlords in the Hindu Kush and negotiated truces in rooms filled with explosives. No, what worried the general was the trembling finger of the young police officer standing in the rain, a man too blinded by arrogance to realize he was about to declare war on the United States Army. They say justice is blind, but on a lonely stretch of Interstate 95 just south of the Virginia border, justice was about to open its eyes, and it was going to be terrifying. This isn't just a story about a bad stop. It's a story about what happens when a small man casts a shadow on a giant and the crushing weight of karma that follows. The rain on Interstate 95 just south of the Virginia border wasn't just falling. It was hammering the asphalt with the kind of relentless gray misery that makes the world feel small and claustrophobic. For Officer Ryan Whitaker, sitting in his patrol cruiser with the engine idling and the heater blasting dry recycled air, the weather was just another reason to hate this shift. Ryan was young with a jawline he spent too much time admiring in the rearview mirror and a badge that he felt weighed 10 pounds heavier than it actually did. In his mind, he was the thin blue line between order and chaos. In reality, he was bored, wet, and looking for someone to blame for it. He drummed his fingers on the steering wheel, his eyes scanning the blur of passing taillights. He wasn't looking for help. He was looking for a victim, a stat. A reason to flex the authority that made him feel 6 feet tall instead of 5'9". Then he saw it. A matte black SUV, a late-model Chevrolet Tahoe cruising in the right lane. It wasn't speeding. It wasn't swerving. In fact, it was obeying the traffic laws with a precision that Ryan found suspicious. Too careful, he muttered to himself, shifting the cruiser into drive. In Ryan's world, nobody drove the speed limit late at night unless they were hiding something. He pulled out, the powerful engine of the Dodge Charger Interceptor roaring as he closed the gap. He rode the bumper of the Tahoe, his high beams flooding the interior of the car ahead. He wanted a reaction. He wanted a brake check, a swerve, a sudden acceleration, anything to justify the lights. Inside the Tahoe, Lieutenant General Elijah Brooks adjusted the rearview mirror to deflect the blinding glare. He sighed, a deep rumbling sound that vibrated in his chest. Eli was built like a linebacker who had kept his form, with salt and pepper hair cut close to the scalp. He was wearing a simple gray hoodie and sweatpants, comfortable clothes for the long drive back from a classified briefing at the Pentagon to his home base near Fort Liberty. To the untrained eye, Eli looked like a middle-aged black man driving a nice car. There were no uniforms visible, no medals, no stars on his shoulders. The only thing identifying his status was the sleek, hard-sided briefcase in the passenger seat locked with a biometric scanner, and the ID card in his wallet that granted him access to rooms the president had to be invited into. Steady, Eli whispered to himself. He knew the game. He had played it his whole life, long before he wore stars. He maintained his speed, hands at 10 and 2. Behind him, Ryan Whitaker smirked. "Gotcha," he said, though he hadn't got anything yet. He flipped the toggle. The red and blue lights exploded into the night, fracturing against the raindrops on the windshield. Eli signaled immediately and pulled over to the shoulder, the gravel crunching under the heavy tires. He put the car in park, turned off the engine, turned on the dome light, standard procedure to put the officer at ease, and rolled the window down despite the freezing rain. He placed his large hands on the top of the steering wheel, fingers spread. Ryan took his time. He ran the plates. They came back as blocked, no record. Ryan frowned at his computer screen. Usually that meant a glitch or sometimes a rental. He didn't consider that it meant government or classified. To him, it just meant the system was slow. He grabbed his flashlight, adjusted his duty belt, and stepped out into the rain. The cold water hit his neck instantly, souring his mood further. He approached the Tahoe on the passenger side first, shining his light aggressively into the back seat. Empty, just a dry cleaning bag and a gym bag. He circled the back, hand resting near his holstered weapon, and walked up to the driver's side. He didn't say hello. He didn't ask if the driver knew why he was pulled over. "License and registration," Ryan barked, the beam of his flashlight cutting directly into Eli's eyes. Eli didn't flinch. He didn't squint. He just stared straight ahead. "Officer," Eli said, his voice a calm baritone, smooth and controlled. "My wallet is in the center console. My registration is in the glove box. I'm going to reach for them now." Ryan didn't like the tone. It wasn't fearful. It sounded educational, like a teacher talking to a slow student. I didn't tell you to reach for anything, Ryan snapped, his hand tightening on his holster. Keep your hands on the wheel. Eli paused. You asked for my license and registration, officer. I cannot produce them without moving my hands. Don't get smart with me, boy. Ryan spat the word out before he could catch it. The rain was loud, but that word hung in the air, heavy and toxic. Eli turned his head slowly, looking past the flashlight beam, locking eyes with the young officer. The general's eyes were dark, intelligent, and currently incredibly cold. I'm going to ask you to reconsider your tone, officer. I'm a United States citizen, and I have complied with your stop. There is no need for hostility. Ryan felt a flush of heat up his neck. He wasn't used to pushback, not from someone who looked like this. Get out of the car, Ryan ordered. For what reason? Eli asked, still not moving. Because I said so. I smell alcohol, Ryan lied. It was a reflex lie, one he used to justify almost anything. Eli's jaw tightened. He hadn't touched a drop of alcohol in years. I'm a high-ranking government official on official travel, Eli said, dropping the first hint. If I step out of this vehicle, this situation escalates to a level you are not prepared for. I suggest you check my license plate again. Get out of the car. Ryan unclipped the retention strap on his holster. Eli looked at the strap. He looked at Ryan's nameplate, R. Whitaker. Very well, Officer Whitaker, Eli said softly. I'm coming out. The door of the Tahoe clicked open. Lieutenant General Brooks stepped out, unfolding his 6'4" frame into the driving rain. He towered over Officer Whitaker. The sheer physical presence of the man made Ryan take a sudden, involuntary step back. Eli stood perfectly still, hands raised to chest level, palms open. The rain soaked his gray hoodie, instantly plastering it to his broad shoulders. He didn't shiver. He just watched the officer with a tactical assessment that was second nature to him. Stance unbalanced, grip nervous, eyes dilated, flight or fight response triggered. Turn around, hands on the hood, Ryan shouted, trying to regain the dominance he felt slipping away. I'm complying, Eli said, turning slowly and placing his hands on the warm metal of the hood. Officer Whitaker, in my back pocket is a wallet. Inside that wallet is a common access card and a badge. I strongly advise you to look at those before you place cuffs on me. Shut up. Ryan moved in, adrenaline spiking. He didn't like how big this guy was. He didn't like how calm he was. It felt unnatural. Ryan kicked Eli's feet apart wider than necessary. Spread them. My identification, Eli repeated, his face pressed against the wet metal of his own car. Check it. I'm checking for weapons first, Ryan sneered. He patted Eli down aggressively, his hands searching roughly. He felt the hard square of the wallet. He yanked it out and tossed it onto the wet hood of the car without looking at it. Then he continued the search. Hey! Eli's voice sharpened, the command voice of a general slipping through. That is government property. Treat it with respect. I'll treat it how I want. Ryan grabbed Eli's left wrist and twisted it behind his back, forcing the handcuffs on. The metal ratchet sound clicked into the night. You're making a career-ending mistake, son, Eli said, his voice dropping an octave. You are arresting a lieutenant general of the United States Army without cause. Ryan froze for a fraction of a second as he secured the second cuff. Lieutenant General. He looked at the man in the hoodie. No way. Generals were old white guys in suits or uniforms. This guy looked like, well, like everyone else Ryan usually arrested. Yeah, and I'm the King of England, Ryan scoffed, tightening the cuffs to the point of pain. You're under arrest for disorderly conduct, resisting a lawful order, and suspicion of DUI. Ryan grabbed the radio on his shoulder. Dispatch, this is Unit 4 Alpha 1. In custody. Male black, large build. He's been combative. Send to transport. I'm going to search the vehicle. Do not enter that vehicle, Eli said. The warning wasn't a threat. It was a statement of fact. There is classified material in that vehicle. You do not have the clearance to view it. If you open that car, you are violating the Espionage Act. Ryan laughed, a nervous, high-pitched laugh. Espionage Act? You watch too many movies, Grandpa. Ryan shoved Eli toward the back seat of the cruiser. Get in. Eli maneuvered his large frame into the cramped hard plastic back seat of the police interceptor. The cage separated him from the front. The smell of stale vomit and pine air freshener was overwhelming. As Ryan walked back toward the Tahoe, Eli closed his eyes. He didn't scream. He didn't kick the door. He began to recite the regulations in his head. He needed to remain calm. His primary concern was the briefcase. If that briefcase was opened by an unauthorized local cop, the protocols that would be triggered would be catastrophic. It contained nuclear readiness assessments for the eastern seaboard. Eli leaned as close to the plexiglass divider as he could. "Officer Whitaker," he projected his voice. "Officer Whitaker, listen to me. Do not open the briefcase on the front seat. If you touch the biometric scanner, it will send a silent distress signal to the Department of Defense. Do not touch it." Ryan Whitaker stood by the driver's door of the Tahoe. He heard the shouting. He interpreted it as panic. He's hiding drugs, Ryan thought. That's it. Big shipment, maybe money. Ryan pulled on blue latex gloves. He felt like a hero. He was going to make the bust of the year. He opened the Tahoe's door and leaned in. He saw the briefcase. It was sleek metallic and looked like something out of a sci-fi movie. A small red light pulsed slowly on the handle. "Bingo," Ryan whispered. Back in the cruiser, Eli watched through the rain-streaked window. He saw the flashlight beam dancing inside his car. He saw Ryan reach for the case. "Damn it," Eli whispered. Ryan grabbed the handle of the briefcase. Immediately, the red light on the case stopped pulsing and turned a solid, angry crimson. A high-pitched chirp emitted from the case, followed by silence. Ryan yanked his hand back. "Weird," he muttered. He tried to pry the latches open. Locked. He shook it. Heavy. He decided to take it back to the station. They could crack it open there. He grabbed the handle again and hauled it out of the car, carrying it through the rain like a trophy. He threw it into the trunk of his cruiser, slamming the lid shut. He got into the driver's seat of the cruiser, shaking the rain off his hair. He glanced in the rearview mirror at Eli. "So, General," Ryan mocked, putting the car in gear. "What's in the box? Kilos? Cash?" Eli looked at him with a mixture of pity and steel. "Your resignation," Eli replied, "and likely your freedom." Ryan laughed again, peeling out onto the highway, the tires spinning on the wet asphalt. He picked up his radio. "Dispatch, 4 Alpha. I'm 10:15 with the suspect. Also recovered a locked case, likely narcotics or proceeds, en route to station. Copy, 4 Alpha." The dispatcher crackled. What Ryan didn't know, what he couldn't know, was that 50 miles away, inside a windowless room at the Pentagon, a red light had just started flashing on a massive digital map. A Tier 1 asset distress signal had been triggered. An analyst with a headset looked up, his face draining of color. "Sir," he called out to his supervisor, "we have a code black on General Brooks's case. Location is stationary, then moving on Interstate 95. The supervisor didn't hesitate. "Is the GPS active?" "Yes, sir. It's moving north at 60 miles per hour. "Get the provost marshal on the line," the supervisor ordered, his voice clipping with urgency, "and scramble the nearest QRF, quick reaction force. Someone just hijacked a nuclear asset." Back in the cruiser, Ryan Whitaker turned up the radio, humming along to a country song, completely unaware that he was now the most wanted man in the United States military's crosshairs. "You really messed up, kid," Eli said softly from the back. "Tell it to the judge," Ryan replied. "I won't have to," Eli said. "The colonel will be here shortly." The intake room of the Willow Creek Police Department smelled of floor wax, old coffee, and despair. It was a smell Lieutenant General Elijah Brooks knew well, though usually he experienced it from the other side of the glass, inspecting military police detachments. Tonight, he was the one being shoved toward the counter. Officer Ryan Whitaker walked with a strut that was almost comical. He placed the heavy biometric locked briefcase on the booking desk with a loud thud. "What have we got here, Whitaker?" Desk Sergeant Thompson asked, looking up from his half-eaten sandwich. Thompson was a veteran with a gut that strained against his uniform buttons and eyes that had seen it all, or so he thought. "Big bus, Sarge," Ryan bragged, unclipping the keys to the handcuffs but leaving them on Eli's wrists for now. "Got a guy impersonating a federal officer, suspicion of DUI, resisting, and this." He slapped the top of the briefcase. "I think we're looking at a major trafficking weight. The thing is locked up tighter than a drum." Thompson peered over his reading glasses at Eli. He saw the wet gray hoodie, the calm demeanor, and the way the man stood feet shoulder-width apart, spine straight, head up. It didn't look like the posture of a drunk driver. It looked like a man standing at attention. Name? Thompson asked, positioning his fingers over the keyboard. Elijah Brooks, Eli said clearly. Lieutenant General, United States Army, service number 09233 Alpha. Ryan snorted. See, he's sticking to the story. Guy thinks he's Patton. Thompson paused. He looked at the ID Ryan had tossed on the counter. It was a standard civilian driver's license, but underneath it was the CAC, Common Access Card. Thompson picked it up. He saw the chip. He saw the rank insignia. He saw the holographic DOD seal. Thompson's stomach dropped. He had served in the Marines back in the day. He knew what a fake ID looked like. He also knew what a real high-level clearance card felt like. This one felt heavy, real. Whitaker, Thompson said, his voice losing its casual tone. Where did you get this? From his pocket. Why? Did you run this through NCIC? Just the plates. They came back blocked. I figured he was running ghost plates. Thompson stood up slowly. Blocked plates don't mean ghost plates, you idiot. They mean restricted. Whitaker, take the cuffs off now. What? No way, Sarge. This guy is my arrest. I'm processing him. I said, take them off, Thompson shouted, causing the dispatcher in the corner to jump. Before Ryan could argue further, the phone on Thompson's desk rang. Not the public line, the red line, the dedicated emergency line that connected directly to the State Dispatch and Emergency Services. Thompson picked it up, his hand shaking slightly. Willow Creek Police, Sergeant Thompson. This is Colonel Jack Reynolds, Pentagon Watch Commander. A voice on the other end boomed so loud that Ryan could hear the distortion from 3 feet away. Who am I speaking to? Thompson went pale. Sergeant Thompson, sir. Sergeant Thompson, you have a geolocation hit on a Tier 1 sensitive asset currently stationary inside your precinct, a black briefcase. Is it there? Thompson looked at the briefcase. He looked at Eli. He looked at Ryan. Yes, sir, it's here. Is the courier with it? Lieutenant General Brooks, is he secure? Well, sir, he's in handcuffs. There was a silence on the other end of the line that was more terrifying than any screaming. It was a vacuum of silence. You have a 3-star general in handcuffs. The voice was ice cold. Sergeant Thompson, listen to me very carefully. Do not touch that briefcase. Do not touch the general. I am activating the National Command Authority Protocol. You are to hold your position. You have a QRF inbound. If a single hair on that general's head is out of place, I will have your department dismantled brick by brick. Do you copy? Copy, sir, Thompson whispered. The line went dead. Thompson looked at Ryan, his eyes wide with genuine fear. Whitaker, give me the keys. Who is that? Ryan asked, his arrogance finally beginning to crack. Why are you sweating, Sarge? That was the Pentagon, Thompson hissed. You didn't arrest a drunk, Ryan. You arrested the man who runs the logistical command for the entire eastern seaboard. At that moment, the door to the station swung open. Chief Harlan Voss walked in, shaking a wet umbrella. Voss was a big man, a political creature who loved power and hated oversight. What's all the yelling about? Voss bellowed. I can hear you out in the lot. Chief, Thompson said, rounding the desk, we have a situation. Whitaker brought in a guy, a general. The Pentagon just called. Voss looked at Eli. He saw a black man in a hoodie. His bias kicked in before his brain could catch up. General, please. Probably stole the ID Whitaker. Book him. If he resists, throw him in the chair. Chief, I really don't think, Thompson started. I gave you an order, Sergeant, Voss barked. He walked up to Eli, getting right in his face. You think you can come into my town, drive like a maniac, and then lie about who you are? I don't care if you're the President of the United States. In Willow Creek, I'm the law. Eli looked down at Chief Voss. Chief Voss, Eli said calmly. You're about to find out that your law is very small compared to the reality of the situation. I suggest you evacuate your civilian staff. Is that a threat? Voss poked Eli in the chest. It is an advisory, Eli replied. My security detail tracks that briefcase. When it was opened unlawfully, it signaled a distress code. They don't send lawyers, Chief. They send soldiers. Let them come, Voss laughed. I got 30 deputies. We can handle a few MP boys. Eli just shook his head. You aren't getting MPS, Chief. You triggered a nuclear readiness alert. You're getting the Rangers. The first sign that Eli was right wasn't a siren. It was a vibration. The coffee in the mug on Sergeant Thompson's desk began to ripple. The pencils in the cup holder started to rattle against the glass. The sound came next, a low, rhythmic thump, thump, thump that grew in intensity until it felt like it was beating inside their chests. "What the hell is that?" Ryan Whitaker asked, backing away from the booking desk. "Helicopters," Eli said softly. CH-47 Chinook's heavy lift. Outside, the night sky over Willow Creek was suddenly ripped apart by floodlights. Not the yellow beams of street lamps, but the blinding, pure white halogen beams of military searchlights. Whoop, whoop, a siren blared, but it wasn't a police siren. It was a louder electronic warble coming from a PA system in the sky. "This is the United States Army. All personnel inside the structure, lay down your weapons and exit the building with your hands above your heads. Comply now." The voice boomed through the walls, shaking the dust from the ceiling tiles. Chief Voss ran to the front window, his jaw dropped. The police station parking lot was no longer a parking lot. It was a landing zone. Two massive Chinook helicopters were hovering just feet above the asphalt, their rotor wash sending police cruisers rocking on their suspension. Ropes dropped from the side doors. Men clad in multicam combat gear, wearing quad-nocular night vision goggles and carrying suppressed M4A1 carbines, were fast roping down with terrifying speed. "They're invading my station!" Voss screamed. "Whitaker, Thompson, get the shotguns! Lock the doors!" "Are you insane?" Thompson yelled, backing away with his hands up. "I'm not shooting at the Army!" "Coward!" Voss grabbed a shotgun from the rack. He racked the slide. "Chief, don't!" Eli shouted, his voice finally breaking its calm containment. "If you point that weapon at that door, you will die. Those men are 75th Ranger Regiment. They are trained to kill the enemy. Right now, you are the enemy." Crash. The front double doors of the police station didn't just open, they disintegrated. A breaching charge blew the glass and metal inward in a shower of sparks and debris. A flashbang grenade rolled into the lobby. Bang! A blinding white light and a deafening concussive wave filled the room. Ryan Whitaker fell to his knees, clutching his ears, screaming. Chief Voss fired the shotgun blindly into the ceiling as he stumbled backward, blinded. "Go, go, go!" The room was instantly flooded with soldiers. They moved like water flowing around obstacles, checking corners. Red laser sights cut through the smoke, dozens of them, all converging on the police officers. "Drop the weapon! Drop it!" 3 soldiers were on Chief Voss before he could blink. One kicked the shotgun out of his hand. Another swept his legs. The third pinned him to the linoleum with a knee to the back of the neck. Ryan Whitaker was curled in a ball under the desk. A soldier grabbed him by the back of his tactical vest and hauled him up, slamming him against the wall. The barrel of a rifle was pressed against his cheek. Clear left, clear right, asset located. The chaos settled as quickly as it had started. The soldiers formed a perimeter facing outward, securing the room. Then a tall man walked through the ruined doorway. He wore the beret of the Rangers and the rank of colonel. He didn't have a weapon drawn. He didn't need one. He walked with the terrifying confidence of a man who commands the people who kill people. This was Colonel Vance Hargrove. He scanned the room, his eyes landing on Lieutenant General Brooks, who was still standing by the booking desk, handcuffs still on his wrists, looking unimpressed by the mess. Hargrove walked straight to Eli. He signaled to a soldier who immediately produced a bolt cutter. The soldier didn't ask for a key. He snapped the chain of the police handcuffs with a single squeeze. Hargrove snapped a sharp salute. "General Brooks, sir, my apologies for the delay. The weather slowed our approach." Eli returned the salute slowly, rubbing his wrists. "Efficient entry, Colonel. A bit noisy, but effective." "We weren't sure of the threat level, sir. The signal indicated a compromised nuclear asset." Hargrove turned slowly to face the room. The silence was heavy. Chief Voss was being held on the floor. Ryan Whitaker was trembling against the wall. Sergeant Thompson was standing with his hands up, shaking like a leaf. Hargrove walked over to Chief Voss. He leaned down. "Get him up!" The soldiers hauled Voss to his feet. The chief was bleeding from a cut on his forehead, his uniform disheveled. "Who is in charge here?" Hargrove asked quietly. "I am," Voss sputtered, trying to regain some dignity. "I'm Chief of Police Harlan Voss, and you are in big trouble, soldier. You just committed a felony assaulting a police station. I'll have your badge." Hargrove looked at Voss like he was a bug on a windshield. "I don't have a badge, Chief. I have orders, and you have something of mine. Hargrove pointed to the briefcase. And you have something else of mine. He pointed to the general. He was driving suspiciously, Ryan Whitaker piped up from the wall, his voice cracking. He refused to exit the vehicle. He resisted. Eli stepped forward. The room seemed to shrink around him. He walked up to Ryan Whitaker. The young officer shrank back, looking at the general's wrists where the red marks from the handcuffs were visible. Officer Whitaker, Eli said, I told you that you were making a mistake. I told you that my vehicle contained classified material. I told you to check my clearance. I thought you were lying, Ryan whispered. Because of how I look, Eli asked. He didn't yell. The question hung in the air, heavy and undeniable, because a black man in a hoodie couldn't possibly be a general. Ryan didn't answer. He couldn't. Colonel Hargrove stepped in. Officer Whitaker, Chief Voss, you are both being detained under the Patriot Act for interference with military operations and mishandling of classified defense information. You will be transported to a federal holding facility in Northern Virginia. You can't do that, Voss screamed. This is America. Yes, Eli said, picking up his briefcase. It is, and the United States Army protects it, even from people like you. Eli turned to Colonel Hargrove. Colonel, secure the dash cam footage from Officer Whitaker's cruiser and the body cam footage. I want it all preserved. We're going to need it for the court-martial and the civil rights lawsuit. Already done, sir, Hargrove replied. Our cyber warfare guys pulled the data from their server the moment we breached the perimeter. Eli nodded. He looked at Ryan one last time. The young officer was crying now, realizing his life as he knew it was over. Karma, Eli said, echoing his earlier thought. It's a heavy thing to carry, isn't it, son? Sir, your transport is waiting, Hargrove said. Eli began to walk toward the door, but stopped. He turned to Sergeant Thompson. Sergeant Thompson, Eli said. Yes, sir, Thompson stammered. You tried to stop them. You respected the rank when you saw the ID. I won't forget that. Thompson nodded, relief washing over him. Eli walked out into the rain, which had finally stopped. The air was crisp. The helicopters were spooling up. As he walked toward the awaiting Black Hawk, he knew this wasn't over. The arrest was just the beginning. Now came the dismantling of the corrupt system that had put him in those cuffs. The federal holding facility in Northern Virginia was a stark contrast to the small-town precinct in Willow Creek. There were no wood-paneled walls, no stained coffee mugs, and definitely no friendly faces. The walls were soundproofed concrete, the lights were fluorescent, humming pure headache-inducing white, and the air was sterile, filtered, and cold. Ryan Whitaker sat in Interrogation Room B. He had been stripped of his uniform. He was now wearing a bright orange jumpsuit that was 2 sizes too big. His wrists, still raw from the zip ties the Rangers had used, rested on a cold steel table. He had been sitting there alone. He wasn't acting tough anymore. The arrogance that had fueled him on the rainy highway had evaporated, leaving behind a terrified young man realizing he had thrown his life into a wood chipper. The door buzzed and clicked open. A woman walked in. She was sharp. Sharp suit, sharp eyes, sharp heels clicking on the floor. She carried a thick file. This was Assistant U.S. Attorney Claire Bennett. She didn't sit down. She stood at the end of the table studying Ryan like a biologist studies a bug. Officer Whitaker, she began, her voice devoid of warmth. I'm going to read you a list. I want you to listen very closely. Ryan nodded, his throat too dry to speak. Deprivation of rights under color of law, unlawful search and seizure, kidnapping, assault on a federal officer, mishandling of classified national defense information, obstruction of justice. She paused. Do you know what the sentencing guidelines are for the mishandling charge alone, considering it triggered a DEFCON alert? I didn't know, Ryan croaked. I didn't know who he was. Bennett slammed the file onto the table. The sound cracked like a gunshot in the small room. That is the problem, Mr. Whitaker, she snapped. You didn't know who he was, so you treated him like a criminal. If he had been a 19-year-old college student driving home for break, you would have done the exact same thing, wouldn't you? You didn't escalate because he was a threat. You escalated because you felt like it. She opened the file and slid a photo across the table. It was a still frame from Ryan's own body camera. It showed General Brooks standing in the rain, hands up, calm. We reviewed the footage, Bennett said, her voice dropping to a dangerous whisper. We saw the timestamps. You claimed in your initial radio call that he was combative. We watched the video, Ryan. He never raised his voice. He never moved aggressively. In fact, he warned you 3 separate times that you were violating federal law. I was scared, Ryan lied. No, Bennett corrected him. You were power tripping, and now you're going to pay for the trip. She leaned in close. Here's the reality. General Brooks has declined to simply have you fired. He wants this to be a lesson, a public one. We are going to indict you on federal civil rights charges, but I might be willing to take the espionage charge off the table, which carries serious time, if you give us Voss. Ryan's head snapped up. Chief Voss? Voss ordered you to book him despite the ID. Voss ignored the Pentagon's call. And we have records indicating that this isn't the first time Willow Creek PD has seized assets from out-of-town drivers to pad the department budget. It's called civil asset forfeiture abuse. We think Voss runs a racket. You help us prove it. Maybe you get to see your future outside of a cell. Ryan Whitaker didn't hesitate. The thin blue line dissolved instantly under the weight of self-preservation. He tells us to target out-of-state plates, Ryan blurted out, the words tumbling over each other. He says if they look like they have cash, find a reason. He calls it the toll. He takes a cut of the seized auction money for administrative bonuses. Bennett smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Get the stenographer, she said to the two-way mirror. Meanwhile, in room A, Chief Harlan Voss was having a much harder time. He wasn't crying. He was fuming. He was currently yelling at a man who wasn't listening. The man sitting across from Voss was Colonel Vance Hargrove, the ranger commander who had breached his station. Hargrove was out of combat gear and in his dress greens, looking immaculate. You can't keep me here, Voss shouted. I know the governor. I play golf with the senator. The senator, Hargrove said calmly, checking his watch, is currently issuing a press statement distancing himself from you. He called your actions abhorrent and un-American. Voss went purple. I was doing my job. That man was a suspect. That man, Hargrove interrupted, his voice like grinding stones, has a silver star, 2 bronze stars with valor, and a purple heart. He has served this country for decades. He has missed the births of his children to protect people like you. And you treated him like a stray dog because you didn't like his car, and you didn't like his skin. Hargrove stood up. You triggered a nuclear readiness alert, Voss. Do you understand the cost of that? We scrambled jets. We rerouted satellites. The bill for the military operations is somewhere in the neighborhood of millions. The Department of Defense is going to sue you personally and the town of Willow Creek for those costs. Voss's jaw dropped. And that's just the money, Hargrove continued. The Civil Rights Division of the DOJ is filing charges tomorrow morning. You aren't going to golf with the senator, Harlan. You're going to federal prison for a very, very long time. Hargrove walked to the door. Oh, and one more thing. The dashcam footage. It's being released to the press shortly. General Brooks believes in transparency. No, Voss whispered. You can't. We can, Hargrove said, opening the door. And we did. The video hit YouTube early the next morning. It quickly racked up 1 million views and became the lead story on CNN, Fox News, MSNBC, and the BBC. The title was simple. Officer arrests U.S. General, ignores clearance. The footage was damning. It showed the rain-slicked highway. It captured the audio perfectly. Ryan's condescending tone, the slur he almost used, the general's calm, terrifying warnings. But the part that made the world stop was the moment Eli was pressed against the hood. The camera angle showed his face, stoic, strong, enduring the humiliation with a dignity that broke the hearts of millions. And then the audio of him warning the officer about the briefcase. You are making a career-ending mistake, son. The internet exploded on X. The hashtags #General Brooks, #Willow Creek PD, and #Karma began to trend globally. Veterans posted videos of themselves cutting up their Police Benevolent Association cards. Civil rights activists pointed to the video as the perfect example of the two justice systems problem. But the real twist, the drama that no one expected, came from the private sector involvement. Enter David Caldwell, a powerhouse attorney reminiscent of the fiercest civil rights litigators. David Caldwell didn't just walk into the story, he landed. He held a press conference on the steps of the federal courthouse in Alexandria, flanked by General Brooks, who wore his full-dress blues, complete with a chest full of medals that shimmered in the sun, and his family. Caldwell adjusted the microphones. The clicking of camera shutters sounded like heavy rain. "Ladies and gentlemen," Caldwell began, his voice booming, "we have seen the video. We have seen the arrogance. We have seen the ignorance. But what we saw was not just an arrest. It was an attempted assassination of a man's dignity." He gestured to Eli. "General Elijah Brooks carries the nuclear secrets of this nation in his hands. He is trusted by the president. But to Officer Whitaker and Chief Voss, he was just a suspect who didn't belong." Caldwell paused for effect. "We are filing a civil suit today against the Willow Creek Police Department and the municipality for tens of millions. But we are not stopping there. We have evidence provided by the brave testimony of a cooperating witness that this was not an isolated incident. This was a racket, a criminal enterprise masquerading as law enforcement," the reporters gasped. "We are calling for the immediate revocation of the Willow Creek Police Department's charter. We are calling for a federal consent decree, and we are calling for Ryan Whitaker and Harlan Voss to be stripped of their pensions." General Brooks stepped up to the mic. He looked tired but resolute. "I did not ask for this fight," Eli said, his voice rumbling through the speakers. "I just wanted to go home to my wife. But if this is the battlefield I must fight on to ensure that no other American, regardless of their rank or their race, has to endure what I did, then so be it. I have fought enemies abroad. I will not shrink from enemies of justice at home." The clip of that speech went viral instantly. "I have fought enemies abroad." It became a rallying cry. Back in Willow Creek, the karma was hitting hard and fast. The Willow Creek Police Department Facebook page was taken down after receiving hundreds of thousands of negative comments. The phone lines at the station were jammed with people playing the Star-Spangled Banner on loop, but the personal blowback was worse. Ryan Whitaker's fiancée, a nurse named Sarah, watched the video in the break room at the hospital. She saw how Ryan spoke to the general. She saw the cruelty in his eyes, a cruelty she had seen glimpses of before but ignored. She took the engagement ring off her finger, put it in an envelope, and left it on the kitchen counter of the apartment they shared. She was gone before the FBI raiders even arrived to search the house for evidence of the toll racket. Chief Voss's wife, a prominent member of the local church, was disinvited from the Sunday social. The country club revoked Voss's membership, citing a violation of moral conduct bylaws. But the hardest hit came from the Army itself. The Army Corps of Engineers announced they were reviewing a planned multi-million-dollar base expansion that was supposed to be built near Willow Creek, a project that would have revitalized the town's economy. In a concise press release, the Army stated, "The Department of the Army cannot in good conscience invest in a community where the safety and constitutional rights of our service members cannot be guaranteed." The town of Willow Creek turned on the police overnight. Business owners who had supported Voss now saw their livelihoods evaporating. The Blue Lives Matter signs were taken down from store windows, replaced by signs that read, "We support General Brooks." The stage was set for the trial. It wouldn't be a long trial, but it would be brutal. The federal courthouse in Alexandria became the center of the American media universe during the trial of United States versus Harlan Voss. It was not just a legal proceeding, it was a referendum on power. While Officer Ryan Whitaker had taken the plea deal offered by Assistant U.S. Attorney Bennett, agreeing to testify against his former boss in exchange for a reduced sentence in a minimum security facility, Chief Voss had chosen to fight. It was a decision born of the same arrogance that had led him to rack a shotgun slide against a Ranger team. Voss's defense team, paid for by a rapidly dwindling Patriot Defense Fund, tried to paint the chief as a victim of federal overreach. They argued that General Brooks had been provocatively compliant, a term that caused the jury to visibly grimace. They claimed the military response was excessive. They claimed Voss was just a good old boy trying to keep his town safe. But then came the cross-examination. Assistant U.S. Attorney Bennett, looking like a predator who had finally cornered her prey, paced in front of the witness stand. Voss sat there sweating through his cheap suit, his face a mask of indignation. "Mr. Voss," Bennett began, holding up a financial ledger recovered from the safe in Voss's office, "can you explain to the jury what the entry 'the toll' refers to?" "It's administrative terminology," Voss lied, dabbing his forehead. "Administrative," Bennett repeated. "So when you seized the vehicle of a single mother from Ohio on Christmas Eve because she had a broken taillight and auctioned her car for thousands, and that exact amount appeared in your personal slush fund under the label 'the toll,' That was administrative. She was suspicious, Voss blurted out. And General Brooks, Bennett pivoted, pointing a finger at Ely, who sat in the front row, stone-faced. Was he suspicious, or was he just black and driving a car you wanted? He didn't listen, Voss shouted, standing up. He thought he was better than me. He thought those stars on his shoulder made him a god. In Willow Creek, I am the god. The courtroom went silent. The stenographer stopped typing. The judge, a stern woman named Justice Holloway, peered over her glasses. "Sit down, Mr. Voss," the judge said, her voice dropping to a terrifying chill. "And let the record show that the defendant has just confirmed the prosecution's entire theory of motive." The jury deliberated quickly. The verdict was unanimous on all counts: deprivation of rights, conspiracy to commit theft, obstruction of justice, and gross negligence of national security. When the foreman read the guilty verdict, Voss didn't scream. He slumped. The air seemed to leave his body, leaving behind a small, broken old man who had spent his life thinking he was the shark, only to realize he was just a parasite. Judge Holloway didn't hold back during sentencing. "Harlan Voss, you treated the Constitution of the United States like a suggestion. You turned a badge of honor into a license to steal, and you nearly started a war to protect your ego. I sentence you to a long term in federal prison without the possibility of parole." The gavel bang sounded like a door slamming shut on an entire era of corruption in Willow Creek. The karma that General Brooks had predicted didn't just hit the men responsible. It hit the town that had enabled them. For years, the people of Willow Creek had turned a blind eye to Voss's toll. They liked the low taxes that were subsidized by the money stolen from travelers. They liked the tough-on-crime reputation. They had ignored the warnings. Now, the bill had come due. After the trial, the Department of Defense released its final decision regarding Project Sentinel. It was a massive infrastructure project intended to build a cutting-edge cyber warfare training center for the Army. It would have brought thousands of permanent jobs, millions in retail revenue, and a new highway interchange to the region. Willow Creek had been the front-runner. The land had already been scouted. Real estate speculators had already bought up lots. The press release was devastatingly short. Due to systemic failures in local governance and a demonstrated inability of local law enforcement to coordinate effectively with federal assets, the Sentinel project has been awarded to a site in North Carolina. The Department of the Army deems the Willow Creek municipality a high-risk environment for personnel. The effect was immediate. Property values in Willow Creek plummeted overnight. The investors who had bought land pulled out, leaving half-finished construction sites to rot in the rain. Small businesses that had been banking on the influx of soldiers and contractors closed their doors one by one. The coffee shop where Sergeant Thompson used to eat shut down. The gas station where Ryan Whitaker had filled up his cruiser went bankrupt. The town was dying, strangled by the reputation its own police chief had built. But the most personal blow came to Ryan Whitaker. He was serving his time at a federal correctional institution in the mountains. He was no longer a cop. He was an inmate, and inmates do not like ex-cops. He spent his days in protective custody, isolated, scrubbing floors. He had lost everything. His fiancée Sarah had moved to Atlanta and married a dentist. His parents, ashamed of the national news coverage, had sold their house and moved to Florida without telling him their new address. He was young and his life was effectively over. One rainy day, a guard knocked on his cell door. "Whitaker, you have a visitor." Ryan frowned. He never had visitors. He was led to the visitation room. He sat down behind the plexiglass. On the other side sat a man in a gray suit. He wasn't wearing a uniform, but his posture was unmistakable. It was General Elijah Brooks. Ryan's hands trembled as he picked up the phone receiver. "General," Ryan whispered. "Why? Why are you here, to gloat?" Eli looked at the young man. There was no anger in his eyes anymore, only a deep, heavy sadness. "No, son," Eli said. "I don't gloat. I'm here because I wanted to give you something." Eli slid a piece of paper against the glass. It was a photocopy of a document. It was dated the day of the arrest. "Read the header," Eli said. Ryan squinted. It was a site recommendation form for the Department of Defense. It was signed by Lieutenant General Elijah Brooks. "I was the chairman of the selection committee for Project Sentinel," Eli revealed. "That night when you pulled me over, I wasn't just driving through. I was coming back from a final site inspection of Willow Creek." Ryan felt the blood drain from his face. I had the pen in my hand, Ryan, Eli continued softly. I had already filled out the recommendation. I was going to give Willow Creek the contract. I liked the town. I liked the location. I was going to sign off on a massive investment for your community. Ryan stared at the paper. He saw the check mark next to Willow Creek. And then he saw the thick red line drawn through it, dated the day after the arrest. You didn't just arrest me, Ryan, Eli said. You arrested your own future. You arrested your town's future, all because you couldn't be polite for 5 minutes. Ryan started to cry, ugly, heaving sobs that fogged up the glass. The weight of it crushed him. He hadn't just ruined his own life, he had destroyed the lives of everyone he knew. I'm sorry, Ryan choked out. I'm so sorry. I know, Eli said, standing up. He buttoned his jacket. But that's the thing about power, son. When you misuse it, it doesn't just hurt the person you aim it at. It ricochets. Eli hung up the phone. He didn't look back as he walked out of the prison. General Brooks walked out of the prison and into the waiting black SUV. The rain had started again, a light drizzle that washed the dust off the Virginia roads. Inside the car, a man was waiting. He was dressed in a sharp business suit, typing on a secure laptop. This was David Caldwell, the attorney, but sitting next to him was a man named Victor Kane. Did you tell him? Kane asked, closing the laptop. I told him enough, Eli said, settling into the leather seat. Did you tell him what was really in the briefcase? Caldwell asked with a smirk. Eli chuckled, a low rumbling sound. No, that remains between us. The audience had believed the briefcase contained nuclear codes. The media had reported it. The government had allowed that narrative to stand because it justified the massive military response. But the truth was stranger. Eli reached down and patted the briefcase, which was sitting at his feet. He unlocked it with his thumbprint. The latches clicked open. Inside, there were no nuclear launch keys. There were no missile schematics. Inside the briefcase was a single vintage comic book encased in a hard plastic slab. Action Comics #1, the first appearance of Superman, valued at millions. And next to it, a stack of documents labeled Operation Clean Sweep. The irony, Eli said, looking at the comic. I really was transporting a national treasure, just not the one they thought. The twist wasn't just the comic. The twist was the mission. You know, Kane said, looking out the window as the car pulled onto the highway, we had been trying to find a way to audit the Willow Creek Police Department for months. We knew they were dirty. We knew they were stealing from our transport convoys, but we couldn't prove it without a direct provocation. Eli nodded. We needed bait, and you were the biggest, baddest bait we could find. Caldwell laughed. The entire stop, the drive, the suspicious behavior, the route, it had been a trap. General Brooks hadn't been a victim. He had been the operative. He had volunteered to drive the honeypot car to trigger exactly the reaction Ryan Whitaker gave. The Ranger team hadn't been scrambled in panic. They had been on standby just over the ridge, waiting for the signal. The nuclear alert was the cover story to give the DOJ immediate jurisdiction to raid the station and seize the records before Voss could shred them. Eli looked out the window at the passing countryside. He thought of Ryan crying in the cell. He felt a pang of sympathy, but it passed quickly. They thought they were the hunters, Eli said, closing the briefcase. They never realized they were in the lion's den from the moment I turned on my blinker. The car sped up, disappearing into the mist of the highway, leaving the wreckage of a corrupt town in its wake. Justice hadn't just been blind, it had been planned, and that is the terrifying true reality of what happens when unchecked authority meets absolute power. Officer Whitaker and Chief Voss thought they were the law, but they forgot that the law has levels. They played a game of checkers against a grandmaster playing four-dimensional chess, and it cost them everything, their freedom, their reputation, and the future of their entire town. It makes you wonder how many other towns like Willow Creek are out there right now. How many officers are one bad traffic stop away from meeting their General Brooks? What do you think? Was the General's trap justified to clean up a corrupt town? Or was the punishment too harsh for a young officer just following orders? I want to hear your verdict in the comments below. If you enjoyed this story of high-stakes justice and karma, please smash that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And don't forget to subscribe and ring the bell so you never miss a story. We release new true crime dramas every week. In the end, The rain on that lonely stretch of Interstate 95 taught us one of the most painful and important truths about life. Power without humility is the most dangerous weapon a person can carry. Officer Ryan Whitaker thought his badge gave him the right to judge a man by appearances, to let arrogance replace common decency, and to treat another human being as lesser simply because he didn't look the part. What he failed to see was that true power, the kind that commands respect, moves mountains, and protects nations, doesn't need to scream or bully. It walks quietly, with steady hands and calm eyes, earned through years of sacrifice, service, and character. General Elijah Brooks didn't need to raise his voice or flash his stars to prove who he was. His dignity, restraint, and quiet strength spoke louder than any siren or flashing lights ever could. The story reminds us that every single day we have a choice: to lead with kindness and respect, or to let our egos turn small moments into life-altering regrets. One careless word, one moment of unchecked pride can cost you everything: your future, your freedom, and the future of everyone around you. True strength isn't measured by how loudly you can shout or how hard you can push someone down. It's shown in how gently you treat others when you hold all the power. Let this story stay with you. The next time you feel tempted to judge someone too quickly, remember the rain, the handcuffs, and the heavy weight of karma that always finds its way home. What do you think? Was General Brooks's response a powerful stand for justice? Or do you believe the consequences were too severe for a young officer who simply made a terrible mistake? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments below. I read every single one, and I love hearing your perspectives. If this story touched you or made you reflect on the kind of person you want to be, please hit that like button. It really helps the channel grow. And subscribe with notifications on so you never miss these powerful, thought-provoking true crime dramas. New stories drop every week. See you in the next one.